because as a nursing student, when I was young, I set out to rescue the world. I wanted to save anybody and everybody that needed saving. And so I went out and looked for the most unhappy, miserable, sad person that was most in need of saving that I could find. And I married him. And this worked well for a number of years until the boys and my mom got sick, because now he was no longer the center of the universe. And when he was no longer the center and everybody focusing the attention on him, things fell apart and we ended up getting a divorce. So once my boys were healthy enough to be out on their own and I was living on my own, I decided, I could do this job from anywhere in the country, and it's either the bravest thing I've done or the dumbest thing I've ever done, but I'm going to move from Hannibal, Missouri to San Diego, California. And as I made that trek across the country, I had time to reflect on what had transpired, and it occurred to me that I'd learned some wonderful, wonderful lessons, and this is really the essence of what I want to share with you tonight. And that is to love with an amazed and amused heart, to think with an amazed and amused mind, and to live with an amazed and amused spirit. And let me share what that might look like for you. Because whether you're suffering yourself from a disability, or whether you are a loved one or a supporter, these are some of the most wonderful gifts that God has ever given us. Let's start with an amazed and amused mind. A lot of this is about humor. And this audience has self-selected, so most of you probably already have a sense of humor or appreciate a sense of humor. Sometimes my audience does not self-select, and you can see people either physically or mentally crossing their arms, going, yeah, humor, cute, entertaining, it's not practical. And I tell them, you don't have to take my word for it. You can ask other people like American Express, who've paid millions of bucks to Jerry Seinfeld, or the folks who paid lots of money to David Spade at Capital One, or Bill Cosby with the Jell-O. And, one of my favorites, when we were flying here, I was reflecting about Southwest Airlines. Who in here has never flown Southwest Airlines? And a few of you in here have not. These folks get it. They just get it. And while I love having an assigned seat, I fly almost every week, I love the fact that they make this experience a very positive one. The very first time I ever flew Southwest Airline, I've got the bag in the overhead baggage compartment, and I've got my luggage in the seat underneath me so I can be assured there's no room to move. And I close my eyes and I'm getting in the zone while people are loading. And then all of a sudden the flight attendant yells, "All right, everybody, listen up." I've never had a flight attendant yell at me before. My eyes snap open, and she continues. She says, "There may be 50 ways to leave your lover, but there's only 4 ways to leave this plane." She's got my attention. And she continues. She says, "This is a non-smoking flight, but if you just have to have a cigarette, you can go out to our non-smoking section found on the wing and watch today's feature, Gone with the Wind." And now everybody who has ignored the safety instructions for their last 57 flights is just riveted on her every word. So, if these people can find the humor in fastening a seatbelt, I'm thinking the rest of us can probably find the humor in our daily lives as well. Because here's something that I discovered. I did my research in graduate school years ago on humor and health and communication. And I discovered that for most adults, and particularly those of us who are healthcare professionals, humor comes from pain and discomfort. We're not laughing about a great hair day. We're not laughing about a sexy figure. We're not laughing about having lots of money. We're laughing about the things that make us crazy. And so some of you are already catching on. You have more material than you would ever be able to use in a lifetime. But let me see by show of hands, how many of you already think you have a sense of humor? See, I would expect every hand to go up if for no other reason it's socially unacceptable to admit you don't have a sense of humor. And in any given situation, we have a bell curve. This is my PowerPoint. Our bell curve. At the far end of the bell curve down here, we have the Jim Carreys of the world. These are the wild and crazy maniacs who are bouncing off the walls. And these are the people who strike fear and terror into the hearts of leaders and administrators and managers. They go, oh, we could never use humor, and the place would fall apart. But there's not a lot of Jim Carreys in the world. You come down a little further, and now you got the people who are funny. And I've met a lot of you in here, and many of you fall in that category, although I will say as an aside, it's more important to see funny than be funny. And you come a little further and you got the people who are amusing. And you come a little further and you got the people who are interesting. And you come a little further down and you got the people who, it's not that they don't like humor, they don't get it. They don't understand what everybody else is laughing about. And if that's you, come see me afterwards, because I got some really helpful tips for you. And you come a little further down and you got the people who not only do they not appreciate humor, and they don't like it, they punish others for using it. I refer to these people as the oxygen suckers. Because it's pretty much what they're doing. They're sucking up all the good oxygen. You see this person at work or at church, you're just trying to be polite, and you say, how you doing? And then you would give a $100 bill to take that question back. Because they're going to tell you. And it's going to be awful. And it's going to go on and on and on and on until you're just like totally wrinkled up and laying on the ground. But you want to try to move your sense of humor up the scale just a bit. Now, when I was doing my research in graduate school, came across a lot of definitions, but my favorite definition came from a gentleman named Joel Goodman. And his definition was this: humor is a childlike perspective in an otherwise serious adult reality. And I like that. How many of you have small kids? How many of you have recently been around somebody else's small child? How many of you have ever been a small child? They have this attitude, and we all had this at one time, if we could just tap back into that. They play and they investigate and they're creative and they see things from this wonderful, wonderful sense of joy. Had a gal, North Carolina. She was telling me about her daughter, second grader. She said, oh, she's so gifted. But we're a little tiny community. We don't have special programs for gifted kids. She's bored all the time. So, I almost didn't notice. She brought home a math sheet that had a bunch of questions circled and with question marks out to the side. But there's one particular math problem. It went like this. There's 32 students in the classroom. 17 of them are boys. How many of them are girls? Her daughter's answer was, the rest of them. Now, is that the right answer? Of course. Is it one that we reinforce? Not so much. But it's that childlike perspective, and how can we tap back into that? Because if you want to have an amusing life, you get intentional. You get intentional because here's where the power of humor is. It's when you are intentional, when you apply it. When you apply, humor in and of itself, entertaining, and that's got value. But when you apply humor to education, you get enlightenment. When you apply humor to business, you get profitability. When you apply humor to health, you get wellness. When you apply humor to another individual, you can create intimacy. When you apply humor to a group, we can create community. It's in the application. So what you need to do is become proactive and intentional, and become intentional about your humor. How can I raise my awareness? Because simply by saying, what am I missing here? You'll start hearing and seeing things that everybody else is missing. I spoke once to a group, and it was Visitors and Conventions Bureau. And one of the people from Florida said to me that they had someone come to them. They called and they said, we want to come down and vacation in Florida, but before we come, can you tell us which beach is closest to the water? Someone said apparently that same person called the Denver's Visitors and Conventions Bureau because they called and wanted to know, what time of year do your deer turn into elk? To start looking for the humor and creating opportunities to be playful. One of my board members, Patch Adams, for the Journal of Nursing Jocularity, said that even in situations where the other people don't encourage us to play, play can be something as simple as a twinkle in your eye a smile, and a willingness to greet. Who in here couldn't do that? Being intentional with your humor. For those of you who have the invisible disability yourself and you've got those days where it's just so hard, here's an intentional thing that you can do. Create a playlist. Come up with at least 10 things that you say, yeah, I think these are fun for me. Now, the trick is at least half of them have to cost $5 or less. And here's the rationale. When you are most in need of something fun to do is when you're least going to be able to think of it. And sometimes the reason we're not feeling so energized and we're feeling kind of crummy is because we don't have any money. Don't want that to be an object. So coming up with a playlist, creating an awareness, manipulating your environment, manipulating your mindset, you can have an amusing life. But if you want an amazing life, then you be intentional about the other aspects of your life. Actually think, what do I want? What do I want to achieve in my personal life and in my professional life? After my divorce and after the boys were better, and by the way, my oldest son, David, has now been cancer-free for 4 years and just got married a week ago. But I thought, if I ever do this again, I'm not sure if I'm going to get involved with somebody again, but maybe this time I should be intentional. The first time was to save someone. This time I think I want to do it for me. What would I like? Well, see, I want somebody who loves to laugh and romance, and somebody who loves chocolate and romance, and somebody who likes champagne, and did I mention romance? And for 2 pages, I went on and on and on about I wanted and romance. I thought, next time around, I'm going to recognize this person. So living with, and thinking with an amazed and amused mind is a piece of this. Now, the next part of this is loving with an amazed and amused heart. And part of that is about loving yourself, and part of it is about loving others. Bernie Siegel, who is the author of Love, Medicine, Miracles, another one of my advisors, said that from the moment we're born till the instant we die, we need relationships. And the nice thing about humor is it creates a bond with the other person. But to love ourselves and to take care of ourselves. And there's so many tools that we need in our tool belts every day. But especially, again, for those of you who are suffering from an invisible disability, humor is one of God's greatest gifts. The Bible said that a brittle spirit drieth the bones, but a merry heart doeth like good medicine. And it's such a wonderful thing, and I don't have time to go into a lot of detail, but here's a little exercise that you can practice for yourself.